said, thank you. As Lauren said, thank you all for being here the morning after a holiday weekend. I am Kate Medina. I am the Executive Director of the Charles Corner Conservancy, which is a nonprofit land trust that protects and sustains urban farms, specifically Corner Farm in downtown Silver Spring. And I had the privilege of being able to attend a wonderful tour that was organized by the Food Council and hosted by Eco City Farms, specifically by John Berger, who is with us today, in July. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my, let's see. Oh, wait, Lauren, do you want to just share? Because it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Kate, I have just made you a co-host.
See that, thank you. Okay.
That's okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, all right, we got it now. Okay. All right, thank you, Lauren. Can everyone see the slides okay? You can just do a thumbs up if they look good. All right. So these slides were put together by the Equitable Land Access Leadership Team, sort of a collaborative effort, and then I get the privilege of sharing them. But I just wanted to start by saying that, please, I know that many of you attended this tour as well. John, you are here. You know far more than anyone else on this call about this. So please feel free to chime in if I miss anything. Most of what I say comes from my notes that I took during the presentation, but if there's anything else you want to add, or especially if I misspeak, please feel free to chime in. This is meant to be more of group, multiple voices coming in, and that's totally fine. All right, so recap of Food Council's visit to EcoCity's Urban Farm Incubator in PG County. So this tour took place on July 19th at the Watkins Regional Park Urban Farm Incubator. It was really well attended. We had a combination of like a lot of Food Council members and not only Equitable Land Access working group members, other working group members came as well. The Food Council Executive Director, Masa Kressel, was in attendance. And then not only Food Council people, but we also had people from PG County, Montgomery County, county staff. So it was great to have everyone together outside. It was warm and muggy, but that's July, DC, What I found most incredible about this tour was one of the things that Margaret, the executive director of EcoCity, Margaret Morgan Hubbard said in the very beginning, which was, yes, this may look simple. I'll go back. This is just, essentially a farm, but don't be fooled. This was a huge effort by multiple agencies coming together, working collaboratively to have a huge impact on small businesses and the greater community. And she was right. It can seem simple when you kind of like walk around and you're saying, yeah, this looks like a farm. Okay, cool. But really it takes a lot of effort. And this apparently was, I have here, 5 years plus in the making. So a lot of conversations over that time period from, ideation to now the site operating. So these are the 5 different stakeholders, if you will, that really lead the Urban Farm Incubator. It's mainly organized and the day-to-day operations are managed by EcoCity Farms. But in addition, Prince George's Soil Conservation District, Montgomery Parks and Rec for Prince George's County, the Prince George's Food Equity Council, which is sort of the counterpart to Montgomery County's Food Council, as well as the capital market for the area, are all involved in making sure that this happens, that the farmers who are participating in the incubator program are well supported, and that the community is benefiting from this project. So I'm going to start first by talking a little bit about the farmers who are participating in the program, and then talk about the infrastructure piece and how this all came together. Because really there are these 2 huge buckets, which is the people and the infrastructure, and how, that's John. I mean, that's your main thing, is organizing the people and keeping the infrastructure working for them, which is a huge job. So there's John in the picture right there in the blue shirt and boots. And He's standing next to one of the farmers who are participating in the Urban Farmer Program, incubation program. Each farmer gets about a quarter acre, but really you can say a half acre, because not only do they have their own individual plot that they fully manage, but there's also these shared spaces. So it's more like having a half acre because they have access to all these other shared spaces. Each farmer is welcomed into the program for a 5-year term. They don't have to stay the full 5 years, but they're welcome to, or they're welcome to graduate early, is how I understood it. Each farmer does commit to participating in a series of trainings throughout the year. It's like school, you can't miss too many of them. And they also have to prepare a business plan, put together their financials of how they're doing and all of that. John helps the farmers with these business plans and, bringing in resources to provide them with additional technical assistance so that they can grow their farming business. Okay. All right, infrastructure. I've divided the infrastructure into 3 different parts. Sort of the primary infrastructure, what we're calling key infrastructure. Secondary infrastructure is that shared infrastructure that I talked about. All the farmers have access to these shared spaces. And then the third piece is individuals, like the individual farmers. What infrastructure do they need on their own? And this is a really important part because we're going to talk about who paid for what, how did we get it, and when we're, this group, we're talking about land access, supporting farmers. One of the biggest risks that beginner farmers are taking is in those first 5 years and investing in all of this infrastructure. What's so unique about this program is that this infrastructure is there, it's provided, they're able to troubleshoot, see what they need, how much of it they need, without making those early risks that cause so many farms to fail in the beginning. Okay, so the key infrastructure, and this was provided by Parks and Rec, and it includes one, like roads, access. How do you even get to this place? So you need to have a place to park and a place for delivery. So Parks and Rec maintains these gravel roads and parking lot. The fence, right? There needs to be a deer fence. And so Parks and Rec put in this deer fence around the entire property, as well as the gates for access. And then there are utilities, electric and water. Those are key. So Parks and Rec provided an on-site electrical hookup station. So just one place to hook up. But this is a multi-acre, I think it's 10 acres, I think. John, you can correct me. Site where you're going to need electric throughout. You're going to need, plugs. And so that is the responsibility of, I think, EcoCity to figure out how they're going to distribute those electrical outlets. And same thing with water. There's this pump house, but you still need to provide, supply lines out to the taps that are throughout the property. So, John, can you chime
I'll
in for a
just jump
second?
in real. Yeah.
Thanks.
So just a couple small things. You're doing great. You're leading the tour. Almost all the farmers here have half-acre plots in addition to the shared space. That's about 21,000 square feet. And Parks did, in addition to the pump house for the well and the well itself, Parks did pay for the buried supply lines and the frost-free hydrants around the whole property. So I think there's 9 scattered all over the place, and Parks paid for all of that.
Cool. Great. Okay, so I think the bullet point says that enough. Parks and Rec provided pump house, supply lines, and freeze-resistant taps. Okay, but thanks for clarifying the size of the farmers' plots. All right. Then getting into these shared spaces and the infrastructure around those spaces. We've got the composter, the hoop house or high tunnel, whatever you want to call it, cold storage, and a wash station. And some of these things are there, ready, working, such as the hoop house, and others are still like a work in progress. For example, we mentioned that the electric, you got to get electric throughout the site if you want to have cold storage. So they have the cold storage. You can see at the bottom right picture right there, the shipping containers, those insulated shipping containers. John did a lot of research to figure out what would be the best option for how many farmers they have, the volume they're producing, and of course their budget. So they have these shipping containers, and now they're maybe in the past 2 months or a month and a half it's happened, but while we were there, they were working on getting the electric lines to these these refrigerated shipping containers. The wash station also, EcoCity has purchased the 3-bin sink, going to make sure that the whole wash station is all GAP certified, but it wasn't quite yet put together in a usable way just yet. And then finally, the composter. They're planning to do a composter similar to the 3-bay sort of compost outpost at 1 Acre Farm. You can see it in the picture there behind Benny, the bottom left picture. And as we were there, Benny was actively building these 3 bays, like using a forklift and raising up the sides of the composter. So it was very much still a work in progress, but it's really exciting to be there in the very beginning and to see this still coming together. And even like the hoop house, for example, I know, John, you still have more plans you want to do with the hoop house. You want more fans, but that requires electric. Okay. Any questions here on this slide in terms of the shared spaces? You can ask it in the chat. We can get to it at the end, or feel free to chime in. John, did you want to say anything about the shared spaces? All right, moving on. And then finally, the individual farmers' infrastructure. How do they use their half-acre space in the most productive way? So irrigation lines and hoses, that's the responsibility of the farmer. And there are multiple ways that they were figuring out how to do that. Some preferred drip, some preferred spray. I'm sure that some were even doing like watering by hand in certain areas. Their tools for the most part, although there are like wheelbarrows around to share and stuff, but by and large, their tools, where they store them, any tables or shade structures, those are all the farmer provides that how they want. Of course, they're able to figure out what is the best pest management techniques for their site. However, in keeping with EcoCity's philosophy, all of these farmers are farming with the organic methods, with the most organic methods possible for their space. Is that an okay way of saying it, John? Yeah, okay. And then, of course, obviously, anything that cannot be shared, such as mulch and your crops and soil conditioners, those are their responsibility. Although there were like big piles of mulch that you could come and take from, big piles of compost if you needed it. So there was some shared element there, but once it's on your plot, it's yours. Okay. And you can just see all the different ways of farming that the farm businesses are exploring at these sites. Okay, there we go. And here's a slide on the specific businesses that the Urban Farm Incubator is supporting. So they currently have 5 different businesses. While we were there, 3 of the businesses were actively working on their sites. And most of them are organized, it seems here, like sort of as individual sole proprietorships, LLCs, even if they have partners. But Sisters of the Soil, according to their website, that is a cooperative. I just thought that was interesting to mention in terms of like, what is the business model that they're exploring? Are they looking at different types of farming business models and figuring out first what would be best for the type of products that they're producing? And then just here, this is Flowers by Flores. She's out there picking flowers while we were there. You can see that there is a church in the background. There's also a school very close to this site that sort of oversees the site. So great nearby neighbors to support the mission. Here's another picture of everybody around the cold storage. So you get a good sense of how large those are and if you have questions on that, if you have a site, John did a lot of research on figuring out what would be best. So he can speak to that. Then here's just like sort of a zoomed out picture of the site. This is nice because it really gives a good sense of like what Parks and Rec, their investments. Like you can see the parking lot there, like how you can access the site. You can see the fence in the background. So you can see the school to the left, just a little bit, maybe like the parking lot of the school. And then you can see the church far in the distance to the right. Okay, and here are the hoop houses. John, what are those, like 24 by 70?
These
50
are each 30 by 96
by
foot
96.
tunnels. They
Yeah.
cost $13K each for parts, and we paid about maybe $3,500 for labor for each one.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Lauren, I can't see the chat, but if there are questions, welcome to take those. I'd also love to hear from others who attended, and if there was anything that you feel particularly compelled to share about the visit, now's a great opportunity to do that. Let's go ahead, maybe start with Lisa. Is that right,
Yeah,
Lauren?
thanks, Kate. That was terrific. Really fantastic summary of the visit. And I know that John's been answering some questions in the chat about investment from various agencies and grants and whatnot. Especially for anybody who's not seeing the chat, so it'd be really great to give him a chance, I think, to speak to that. I think we're probably, a lot of us are curious as to where all the support is coming from, because it's just pretty phenomenal.
John, did you hear all that? Lisa was wondering if you could share some of what you have added to the chat, if you could just share that verbally.
Oh, yes, I understand. Yeah, so I answered two questions so far. One was about the funding sources for all this infrastructure. So there's three main pieces to that. The first is funds encumbered by Park and Planning Commission. That totals about 300,000 so far, although a lot of that is like in kind, like the labor to build the road and things like that. I guess MNCPPC is very, very large, so I think it is helpful to understand that like the reason that we are here is that this property is owned or managed or whatever, I guess, by the Natural and Historical Resources Division of PG Parks and Recreation. Which there's a person there that has been working with ECO for well over a decade, and so that's sort of like there's a lot of history there. ECO's first farm is on an NHRD piece of property in Edmondson, so there's like a long, very long, sort of ongoing relationship and trust building there. The second source of funding was a grant that the PG Soil Conservation District got from the National Association of Conservation Districts. That was a $50,000 grant. Let's see, maybe let's say like 16 grand maybe of that went to purchasing a BCS two-wheeled walk-behind tractor and implements for us to use at the site. It's owned by the district, but we have a memorandum with them that it's just for use at the incubator for now. We might make it a countywide rental program thing available in the future, but for now it's just for the incubator. They also used a bunch of that money to pay staff time to do engineering and design work and like technical support with like the initial layout of the site. It's not extreme, but there's a slope to this site, and so they wanted to really make sure if we were going to be doing this more intensive agriculture and having open soil and tilling some stuff up, that we had a really, really over-designed, very large drainage system for the site, which is good because with these crazy storms that we've been getting these past few summers, like it looks like a huge drainage ditch, and I have seen that thing full to the brim of water when we get an inch or an inch and a half in an hour. So I'm glad they thought about that. And then the third funding source, ECO applied for a USDA grant. It was the Urban Agriculture Innovative Production Grant Program, which is under the Urban Ag Office, which is likely to be eliminated in the next federal budget. which is not great for this sort of thing. It doesn't affect us because ours is going to run out anyway, but yeah.
Hmm. Well, that's great. How much was the Urban Ag and Innovative Production Grant?
Oh, that was a $300,000 grant for
Over
a
3 years?
period, 2 year.
2 year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
Thank
and
you, John.
Oh, thank you. I was just gonna echo Lisa's thanks to you, Kate, for giving us a great overview. And John, I'm so glad you're here as well. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on kind of the ordering of all this funding. Like, did you get the USDA grant first? How did parks get involved? When did that happen? If you could just kind of share the timeline maybe of how all the funding came in.
That is a great question. That all happened before I was around, so I don't know actually the specifics of that, but I think the park funding must have happened. The park funding and the district funding must have happened first because they started doing groundwork on this property in fall of 2021. So they would have had to secure that funding many months before that to make that happen. Our USDA grant started also in September of 2021, although we did not actually, ECO didn't hire anyone and didn't spend a dime of that until, let's say, March of 2021.
And then elaborating on that, like, okay, so that kind of makes sense. What about going forward? This, USDA grant is a 2 year grant. All of the parks and planning and soil conservation money feels very like front end infrastructure investment. What about paying you and others, like maintaining this site in perpetuity?
This is the biggest and the hardest question, of course. So like you're totally right that this project was started with a bunch of capital money and not a super fleshed out idea about what the operating budget is going to be and where that is going to come from. So ECO has applied to that USDA program twice since we got the first grant, and we did not get it either time. That program is extremely oversubscribed, and now it's probably not going to make it in the next appropriations bill. So where our current status with this is that we are extending our initial USDA grant an additional 6 months to give us basically till March of 2024 to spend that money. And Park and Planning, the paperwork is happening on this right now. Park and Planning is going to hire me 30 hours a week as like a sort of a weird park ranger to basically do sort of the day-to-day stuff that I have been doing here. So I will work for ECO a little bit and Park and Planning the majority of the time. That's like it's not a one-time thing. That is like it's part of NHRD's annual operating budget that like there will be this money for a incubator farm manager. But yeah, but the question about like after March of 2024, where are we going to get the money to fill the gas can and buy hand soap and paper towels and fix all the things that break all the time is very real. So I'm like working on some of this now. We're going to use as much of that USDA money as we can to sort of like buy cases and cases of all of those things while we can spend that money to try to make it through 2024 if nothing else comes through. We're looking at other options for operating budget, unrestricted funding type stuff, but we don't know.
What's the I mean, you don't have to answer, but what's the estimated annual budget for this site year over year?
I don't know yet. I have to crunch some numbers. If you take the salary piece out of it,
Yeah, sure.
which like you can't really, but you can. I would guess that I feel I don't really want to guess, but if I was going to guess, I would say maybe 10 or 15 grand would be sufficient.
You got this, John. You guys can do this.
I think we can do it. So elements of that so a lot of that is gas and just like consumable items. We have a well here, so we don't have a water bill, which is an incredible benefit for this situation. There are some drawbacks that I could talk to if people really want to know, but I think it was a great choice. So we don't have a water bill. Park and planning pays the electrical bill also. We don't use a ton of electricity, but we don't pay for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. And until now, none of the farmers pay any rent or any fees for being here or using the stuff here. That is pretty unusual as far as like the national landscape of farm incubators. I think it's almost certain that by the 2025 season, we will start incorporating ground rent and cooler rent and probably like an hourly charge for me to use the tractor for people. A lot of that is still to be decided. I think the model that we're going to use is like maybe the first year you pay 20% of market rate for those things, and then the longer you stay, the closer towards market rate you're paying, because the point of this incubator is not just to like provide free stuff to people forever. It's like to get them ready to run a commercial enterprise on their own once they leave here. And so, yeah, we want to get them used to what stuff costs.
That makes a lot of sense, especially as some of that infrastructure we were talking about that is not yet fully functioning. It'd be really hard to charge rent when you actually don't have a refrigerator that is hooked up to electricity. So that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Lorian, who else?
Sure. Yeah, I had a question, and I just wanted to say, John, thanks for hopping on this call and fielding all these questions, about like the details of the farm. I appreciate that from the site itself. I wanted to also just ask, I know that John, this is before your time, but a lot of this work, was made possible, it sounds like, through like the work of Margaret developing like a pretty amazing Margaret, the founder, developing a pretty amazing relationship with, the individuals at Parks and Rec, and Parks and Planning or Parks and Rec. And I am just wondering if you've ever heard like, about the ideation and like origin of the Urban Farm Incubator, because, like sort of, was it pitched to Parks and Rec, or was it their idea? Or, because in Montgomery County, if we would like similar programming here, that's where we're at, right? So wondering if you've ever heard tell of how that got started.
I can do the origin story. The origin story of ECO, I think, is important too. So ECO, before it was ECO, it was part of a thing called the Engaged University that Margaret ran. That was like a town gown partnership building suite of programs that UM College Park funded. They had like the Masterpiece Community Garden was a piece of it, and they had like a biodiesel lab and like a youth bike repair program on a trailer. It was really cool. The university pulled the funding, and Margaret decided she wanted to focus on the urban farming piece. So she was looking for a place to bring all these people and all this expertise that she had built around this thing. And so she approached Park and Planning about a basically abandoned, like maybe 1 acre lot that was like, it was a tennis court with like an abandoned house behind it or whatever. So that was the site that became EcoCity's Edmonston farm. For the first few years, Eco mostly did like youth programming, college volunteer stuff, and then got into beginner farmer training for adults. And so I think Eco is doing maybe its 8th or 9th cohort of those. In the past, maybe 5 or 6 years, they've started to get federal funding to do those, which is great for the stability of it. But the vast majority of people that take Eco's beginner farmer training courses don't have family land, don't have an inheritance, don't probably have like a direct familial experience of agriculture, at least not like in this generation. So people graduate and they want to know where they can keep doing it. And then just like the space available to Eco was not enough to give those folks a place to practice. So that's where the idea for the incubator came from. They kicked it around for years in the meetings, I think, that like led to the formation of the PG County Food Equity Council Eco was like a founding partner of that. And so it was like an idea out there that had been talked about a lot for years. And then this site, basically like Parks and Planning has an existing ag leasing program. They lease about 1,200 acres to farmers. Most of it is commodity grain people. But this site where the incubator is now, they lease to like a guy that wanted to do like a apple orchard or something. He tried it, he had a bad year and he abandoned it. And so this site was fallow for maybe 4 years. And sort of in that time period was when they're like, oh, okay, here's a place we could actually do this farm incubator. Let's go to the budget hearings for park and planning. Let's apply to the National Association of Conservation Districts to get some funding to design it and build it.
That's great
And thanks
background.
so much, Lisa. Sorry, I think there's a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. John, I just wanted to follow up on the relationship building part of that. If I remember correctly, the guy at Parks and Rec who was there during the tour, and I'm sorry, I've just spaced his name, but am I right? I think I heard him basically say that he himself has he was connected to the idea long before the position he's currently in, and that he's kind of gone up in authority level within parks, right? And so I'm just wondering to what degree you think that's relevant to the ability for all of this to happen.
Oh, it's extremely relevant. So Kyle Lowe is his name. I don't know what his position was when he first started working with ECO. His current title, I think it's Deputy Director for Natural and Historical Resources Division for Park and Planning. I think I've heard him say that like there's no like real designated position to manage the agricultural leasing within Peachy Parks and Rec. And sort of as he rose up in the ranks over his career, however this happened, I don't really know, but sort of like adopted that as one of his things because Margaret was in his ear and he wanted to preserve farmland as this county gets more and more developed, and sort of like took it on so that some of what's possible could become possible. I guess so. Like, I'm getting hired as like a temp hourly park ranger right now for parks. I think one idea that the stakeholders of this project want to push in the future is to, and this requires more meetings and like public process and stuff, is like to create a designated career level position to manage ag leasing for parks, which would be both like these weird small farm pilots that we're doing and the larger corn and soybean leases. And like probably that job includes that, like to give it enough to be a full-time job, that job probably also includes some of the community gardens that exist on parkland and some of the like partnerships with various school gardens. Yeah, but that's all later.
Interesting. Who currently does is there a person who currently manages the community gardens program, or is that also distributed?
It's a ranger named Mike.
Cool. Okay.
I mean, there's the permitting side, which is totally separate. Like, but in terms of like sort of who do they call when there's a groundhog or whatever, like there's a ranger named Mike.
All right. Any other questions for John or about the tour in general? All right. Thank you so much, John, for attending and also for hosting everyone back in July. That was like a highlight for me. I told Lorian my family was actually on vacation that week, and I had driven home from the beach that morning and gone right to that event because I didn't want to miss it. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm waiting for a farmer to show up and she's not here yet. So I'll probably just join a breakout group until Alvina shows up because
great.
Oh,
Well, that's going to be a lucky breakout group to have you. So I'm going to turn it over to Lorian because she's good at these sort of, figuring out who goes where and presenting the breakout groups for us. So Lorian.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I just also like to say, thanks so much, John, for just hopping on this call and just spontaneously answering so many questions. I so appreciate that. I just think this is like a perfect segue into the breakout groups, because you were just talking about, I think it's so interesting that there's in PG County, they're going to have they have at least someone now managing an ag lease program, and they're going to potentially have a career level position for someone actually managing that program. That kind of, may relate to a lot of the ideas that we talk about in our breakout groups. But thanks so much also, Kate, for the overview of Eco-City Farm Incubator. It's so cool. There's just so much that we can learn from in Montgomery County. Now time to toggle to our second, segment of the working group meeting. We have, just by way of an introduction, we are, as our examination of the equitable land access of Montgomery County continues, we have sort of been discussing, all the conversations we've had of all the barriers that exist and all the solutions. We've sort of emerged three sort of areas that we are looking at, and we have come up with, sort of what we think are some areas that within the next year or two could potentially be some sort of, way to address these areas of equitable land access, right? So our three areas are, just to introduce you, we've been talking a lot about ag reserve private land issues, and that's a lot of leasing and owning land, right? How do we make, our very expensive land in the ag reserve better, more affordable and more accessible and less risky to any would-be beginning farmer, right? And so this kind of stems off of, we had Mark Grossman from the Farm at Our House talking about his leasing arrangements and how much risk he has in the land, and his idea that if he lost access to the land, he'd lose a lot of his own investments in the land. And so the idea is, as we continue forward in the ag reserve with trying to help farmers to become, to basically get their business off to a start, be able to access this land, how do we help farmers with their lease agreements, right? And so, talking about, like, for example, like, how do they make land improvements on leased land? What's the term of the lease? We've also talked about the term of the lease being a 5-year or 10-year lease, as opposed to what's common, which is just a 1-year lease. That way, they also are more eligible for all sorts of government funding and government programs in a longer lease. If you are on a lease that is a 1-year term, you are almost always ineligible for funding opportunities that come through USDA and other entities. So that's breakout group number 1. And I will be leading that breakout group, actually. So please join us if you're interested in that. And the other breakout group is urban and peri-urban ag promotion on private land. We have talked a lot about Montgomery County's urban ag tax incentive. And if you recall, Kate was joined by the other farmer of the 2 in the county that qualify for the urban ag tax incentive. We've talked about how that urban ag tax incentive might actually be tweaked to perhaps, have more than just 2 farms in the entire county be eligible for this tax incentive. So we've talked about widening the geographic area. We've talked about lowering the required annual income to be eligible for that tax incentive. So those are some ideas. We would need to do some better analysis on what how many farms would qualify if we do change it, and what the economic impact in terms of tax revenue to the county would be if we were to change that. We need to dive into that. And Kate will be, as very knowledgeable about the urban ag tax incentive. She will be leading that breakout group. And then we're all we're all primed to talk about the food production on government-owned lands. Again, this is our tour of Eco-City, has a little bit of like a great example of the possible, what we could do in Montgomery County in terms of we need to, in our county, identify those specific barriers to accessing government-owned lands for food production, And that's a lot of different government-owned lands. It could be parkland. It could be Montgomery County parks. It could be, community centers. Right now, we decided that we talked about how we're not going to talk about schools because that's an entire can of worms, but, community centers, and other public lands. So those are our 3 breakout groups. We have, let's see. Oh, Kate, could you advance the slide one?
Yep.
Thank you. We also have, so just in each issue area, the thought is, we do need to, we're driving towards like a capstone of sorts. We're calling it capstone, but it's basically like, sort of in November, we're going to be, kind of nailing down, like, this is what we think that we should do. These are our solutions in these 3 areas. So we need to develop a background or intro problem statement, state our specific recommendations, and then state what's precisely is needed to implement this recommendation. And it could be a change in legislation. It could also be programming or tweaks to existing programs that we already have. For example, funding or personnel, as John mentioned, like, they're augmenting a certain staff position in PG County. Do we need to do something like that? So those kinds of solutions, get real specific because we need to have specific recommendations. And then the idea is who stands to benefit. So really important, obviously, equity consideration, and we have a few tools through which to analyze any specific recommendation we have regarding, the exact populations that stand to benefit. So in each breakout group, we hope to, I don't want to use the word homework, but we hope to figure out if anybody is ready or willing or has the time to flesh out some of these ideas in these issue areas. So without further ado, let me go ahead and, if you wouldn't mind, does anybody have any questions on the breakout groups?
Just repeat the 3, Lauren.
Actually, and Kate, could you go back one? Okay.
Trying. Hold on. It's not going back.
Great.
There you go.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right.
Thanks.
And if that's okay, does everybody see the breakout group pop up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
What if we want to join a different group? Like, I wanted to join the Ag Reserve group. I think that
Shoot. It was actually, that is not supposed to be an automatically assigned thing. You're supposed to be able to. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Technical difficulties.
just
One
say that.
moment, please. I'm sorry. We're going to close those rooms. I'm sorry, everybody. The breakout rooms can be such a bear.
Have we lost a few people who've already jumped in?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get in breakout group number 3.
Okay, great. If you wouldn't mind holding on just 1 second, and I
Okay, because
apologize.
I'm using my phone. Usually I'll be on my computer and I don't see how to get in there.
Yeah, I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties, but we are going to close in 10 seconds, literally giving me a time.
Okay.
All breakout rooms will close in 6. 1 second, please. Okay. Gotta love Zoom issues, right? This would be the time if we were all in person, we'd all be moving our chairs all around the room. Okay, allow person. Hello.
I want to try to be in the funding one, number 3.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not. I'm
It's
sorry,
sending-
everybody.
it's
For some
sending
reason, this
needed.
isn't working the way it's
Yeah.
supposed to. Okay. I really don't know why this isn't working.
Lorianne,
Yeah.
I believe if you try if we open all three rooms, I think it will give folks the chance to choose.
Yeah, actually, I just realized one of the things is if it, do you see how in the breakout rooms, okay, like let participants choose rooms. Okay, that actually, I think I found it. I'm so sorry. I thought I had one thing checked and it wasn't checked, so. Okay. Can everybody see the breakout rooms now and choose their room? Thank you.
It's not there yet.
Yeah, I'm
We
not
don't
seeing it,
No, it's
Lori.
not there yet.
It's at the bottom right hand. It's really small. It says join a room, and then you scroll down and it'll give you the
Yeah.
option to join either room.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. And again, room number 1 is ag reserve, private land issues, leasing, etc. Room number 2 is the urban and peri-urban issues. And room number 3 is government-owned lands. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone.
Oh, I guess the person in the back.
Kate, have you ever testified in for parks, for Montgomery parks, in front of?
No.
I'm doing it this week. I'm asking people's opinions about what it's like.
Wait, testified for Montgomery Parks.
Yeah, the planning department is having
Okay.
a testimony on their CIP plan, their capital improvement projects, and we're submitting
Oh,
testimony
yeah.
on it. And I was like, oh, I'd go do that in person, but I'm just very interested to see what it's like because I
Mhm.
signed up and they were like, oh, we'll let you know the details the day of, and I was like, it's not very helpful. They were like, they were like, not everyone gets it, and they haven't even told me if I get one of the slots. And I'm like, yeah, thank you, but I would like to know if I have to go. I'm assuming I'm going,
Is
but
this a food council
yeah,
activity or is this
yeah.
just a personal?
No. This is a food council activity.
Oh, okay.
Committee's we're trying to weigh in a little more on like parks planning stuff. Especially Wendy's like so knowledgeable about park planning and is her terms up on the board. So we're trying to use that knowledge while we can.
Mm.
To like make our voice more heard on park planning stuff. So yeah, we're doing that. And then we're also submitting some testimony. I think you were in the email chain last week about Fairland Briggs Cheney as well.
That's exactly what I was just gonna ask.
Yep.
I was like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the pipeline as well. So we started drafting up. That's a couple weeks away still. So I can definitely share it with you once it's more finalized and just get your input on it. But yeah, we are planning on submitting testimony as well.
I spoke to Lorian. Yeah, I spoke to Lorian last week about it, not Michelle. I spoke to Lorian and I asked, so Wendy sent me a private message saying like,
Yep.
I'm sending this to you just as like a basic citizen, not a
Yep.
food council person, not a this person, not a that person, just as a basic citizen. I was like, noted, Wendy, it's fine. Just ask.
You can just
And
send it.
yeah, you just tell me what. No judgment. And she said she strongly recommended that Coiner prepare test. All right, looks like everyone's coming back,
Yeah.
but prepare
Gotcha.
testimony for that September 27th hearing.
Gotcha. And I saw your conversation with Michelle about potentially, I will keep you in the loop because I know Michelle's out the next 2 weeks, but I can keep you in the loop on where we're at on
Okay.
that.
Thanks. That'd be great.
Yep, of course.
Cool.
All right, thank you, everybody. I appreciate that, and I know we kind of ran a little long, but the breakout groups, I mean, we were just in such a great conversation. Just from the fact that no one had messaged me, I just knew you all were also in good conversations. So just hoping to get a quick report out from the facilitators of the breakout groups to talk about what you all discussed. In essence, just continuing to move that needle forward towards like concrete solutions to these issues, right? We talked a lot in our breakout group number 1 about basically, you know, it's a breakout group to talk about the private land issues in the ag reserve and, you know, in particular land lease arrangements, but we talked about a little bit more than just the land lease arrangements. We were talking a lot about the idea of supporting farmers as they're, you know, negotiating their leases and, you know, potentially figuring out how to sort of support farmers who are just in the process of like basically entering a new lease. We found out Christina shared a really good resource called Land for Good, where they have lease templates. So, which basically, you know, just kind of brings up the idea of just getting more resources out to farmers on how to negotiate their leases. We talked about, and Montgomery Countryside Alliance does already do this, like connecting people who are negotiating their leases to resources. And so how like to just continue and augment that, basically to figure out, you know, our issues, because, you know, when farmers are on their land, the landowners living there, and, you know, basically having to like sort of enter into this sunshiny, you know, I think that Christina put it, you know, you don't have your sunny day cap on, you have your rainy day cap on, and you negotiate your arrangement with that in mind. But unfortunately, that's really hard without a neutral third party to help you. So basically, but who is that neutral third party? and where in the county can we, have maybe someone dedicated to that, maybe, at Future Harvest or OAG or the Land Link program, but, just kind of looking at what capacities we already have for that, and continuing to augment them if we need to. And also just talking about, we are going to learn more about what exactly the requirements are to qualify for Schedule F tax, the Schedule F like tax rates, basically where ag land is taxed at a lower rate. We already have like some, resources there that we've collected as a working group, but looking through that and maybe like, making that very clear to us and to others as we continue to look at those arrangements. So that's what we talked about. Anything else that I forgot? People who were in on our group? Okay, great. Well, let's see. And Kate, would you like to do a little report out of what your group talked about?
I can share out for the group also.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
happy to. So yeah, we had a small group, Kate, Esther, and myself, we're talking about, and this is actually a conversation, Kate, we were talking about the urban ag tax credit and ways to improve it, improve accessibility to it and equity within that tax credit. And it's a conversation we've actually been having kind of preliminarily with Kate for over the past couple of weeks. So it's something we've kind of been on our radar, and we've been paying attention to, and kind of, talking with Kate about how she feels about it and ways to improve it. And what we talked about today is that we're pretty sure we need to talk about policy level change at this when it comes to the current tax credit and how we can maybe tweak it to be more. And what we talk about is that we think that the county views it as, tax credits and tax breaks or whatnot as a potential drain, and not it's less revenue for the county. And what we want to really emphasize is that these tax credits are about equity and inclusion as well. Like, it's not just down to dollars and cents. This is how we create equity, and this is how we create diversified farms and farms that represent Montgomery County and the culture of Montgomery County. So we talk about these policy level changes, and that included the language of equity and inclusion within it as well, not just focusing, like I said, on the money side of it, but that the policy needs to talk about why this benefits the county on multiple fronts, including creating these diversified farms and diversified businesses through this potential tax credit. So the benefit, we see it as, like I said, a policy change because it can benefit both the county and the people within the county as well. So that was kind of our focus. And it's, like I said, it's a conversation we've been having recently over the past month or so. And it's something we're kind of working towards writing out and fleshing out as ideas of how that could be improved.
That's great. Thank you, Jack. And just to add onto that, like the specific recommendation, because that was one of the things that Lorian had that you wanted to know, like, do you have any specific recommendations? Would be to include language in the urban ag property tax credit that says an eligibility criteria to receive this tax credit is, to qualify as a low income household. So that not everybody who has a half acre of land can be farming on it and receive up to 80% of their property tax credit, of their property taxes credited back to them. But that you actually have to qualify not only location of land, size of land, volume of farm products produced, those criteria already exist. But a fourth criteria should be income level of the household. And we feel that that would really resonate as we go to try to make these policy changes. We're not just blanket statements saying expand, decrease the size of the property so more people are eligible, decrease the volume of farm products produced so more people are eligible. We're also increasing the criteria through that equity lens, increasing the restrictions through that equity lens. So we feel like that would really resonate as we try to make these policy changes. Okay, thank you.
That's awesome.
Just a clarification, Kate. So the income criterion would apply to someone who would be benefiting from the land? Or, I mean, because I'm just thinking, who would be applying for this tax credit? Would be somebody who has.
You'd still have to be a property owner. And that's what's really difficult.
Yeah. So
what property owner is going to qualify as low income?
Yeah, that's what I'm confused about.
The
So I
only other thing we can do, which I don't think that this could happen, but this is the way the state is set up. For the state, if you're a property owner and you protect your property, you can also get a tax credit or a I don't know how we could do this actually.
I guess I was just wondering if, you know, depending on who the beneficiaries are. I'm just thinking, let's just take Coiner as an example, right? So it's benefiting a lot of people potentially who are lower income, right? But the landowner itself may not be low
That's
income.
I'm so sorry. That's a very, very good idea, Lisa. That's very interesting. But just in interest of time, I'm looking at the fact that we only have a minute or two to hear back from group number 3, and I'd love to hear what they also came up with.
PBC, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and any of my sort of co-participants in group 3 feel free to jump in as well. So we had a great discussion in terms of like things that are kind of needed to kind of advance this work. We were wondering, we thought it'd be really helpful to kind of do a review of the amount of arable land that there is on public lands. So it would kind of be a helpful place to start to see, you know, how much land is there, where is it located, kind of do a landscape assessment on that. We're talking about how in urban areas there isn't as much, and obviously there's competing demands where we do have open space. People value parks and trees, and so they may not always kind of think of those lands for food production. So kind of thinking about where the land is and what are the different uses, as well as like the proximity of the land to the people that would be producing the food and farming the land. So I thought all of that would be helpful. We also talked about how kind of want to like change people's hearts and minds, I guess, to make sure that like food production is kind of incorporated into their thinking when they're thinking about land planning. So have that be sort of part of what is considered. We're seeing more shifts in this direction, like with the Thrive document, as well as some of the planning documents that have been created by the planning department for specific areas, such as Briggs Cheney. So we just kind of want that perspective to continue to kind of make sure that food production is kind of front of mind as we're thinking about land uses throughout the county. And then also that we don't want to be limited in thinking about only open spaces for food production, that we can get more creative and encourage creativity in thinking about places where there can be space for food production. So we're talking about the Purple Line, for instance, which is currently under construction. There'll be places, some stops on that main route. You know, there's obviously kind of the fear of like big development sort of coming in and housing coming in, but there's also their lower income neighbors who are concerned about that. But want to make sure that as those developments are happening, that the conversation of food production is part of it, you know, so where are there spaces where farming could be incorporated, some green spaces perhaps on rooftops and places like that. And then Lisa gave us a great update on the space that Cheer has been looking at the Long Branch Library and sort of the challenges there. There have been, you know, it sounds like it's been sort of a rocky road with those discussions, but hopefully things are conversations are happening and we're moving in the right direction there. And we talked about the importance of kind of sharing successful models from other places, developing interagency relationships and trying to come up with some creative solutions to meet multiple needs. And I know we're short on time, so I'll stop there just and see if others have anything they'd like to add to that. Christina?
Thank you so much. Masa, you mentioned Briggs Cheney Fairland, and I'm putting in the chat right now when that plan, which is an excellent new master plan, when that came in front of the planning board, we circulated a group sign-on letter to support some of the really excellent food growing opportunities that they're baking in there. It is coming in front of the council soon, the 27th, I think. I'm trying to get another group letter together, so I'm sharing in the chat my email and then the old letter. If you're interested in signing on to the new one, which I am working on, just hit me up and we'll welcome anyone that is interested in just, you know, when they get it right, we need to say, you know, bravo, so that we can have more of it. So thanks.
Excellent point, Christina. Well, thanks so much. I think, you know, I wanted to say just at the Fairland, the Briggs Cheney Fairland Master Plan, I know we are also putting together a letter that I know Michelle has said. I don't know if Jack, you want to go ahead and update that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we are also putting testimony together that we'll submit by the end of the month. I'm not 100% sure at this. I don't know if it will be like a sign on or more of just our own testimony. I don't know if we decided that yet from the policy committee. But we are planning on weighing in, and I'm sure I'd be happy to share a sign on with our policy committee, and I'm sure we'll be willing to sign on.
Great. And I know we're over time, so I just wanted to point out that if you have to go, you're completely forgiven. And Massa says she has another meeting. Thanks, Massa. But for anyone who wants to stay on an extra minute or two, I'd love to hear what Lisa has to say.
Just a quick positive follow-up on the Long Branch situation. I just wanted to let everyone know that the group that's been meeting as the Library Advisory Committee, which is it's the public, it's neighbors, it's a fairly newly established Library Advisory Committee, but they meet on the third Thursday of the month, which is also the evening when Coiner Farm has its wonderful open, live music and public gathering time, which I think has been such an amazing community building time. And so when I expressed a little frustration that those things conflicted, and simultaneously was trying to raise awareness of an interest in food production on public land, the library folks decided to officially cancel the next meeting so that we could all go and enjoy the Coiner space and get to know it, because there were a lot of people, including library staff, who are not familiar with Coiner Farm. So I think I see that as a small but positive development. And so just putting in a plug for Coiner as well, third Thursday events, right, Kate? And we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, we're excited to have you guys. It's gonna be great. Thank you, Lisa, for organizing, for being such a champion for the garden space behind the library. It's a long road, as we learned from Eco City.
And we look forward to learning more about your experiences in Wheaton, because I think that's really, will be a good education for all of us.
I'm excited to share.
Well, thanks so much, everybody. Just wanted to say, good to see you. If you're around September 24th, we're going to be having a Moco Made Day at Olney Farmers Market. So if you're at the farmers market that day, hit us up. September 28th is the Moco Made Food and Beverage Expo, the afternoon 11 to 2 at the Silver Spring Civic Center. Hit us up there if you'd like. All this is on our website. And also, we are going to be touring, very exciting, Community Farm Share at in Durwood at Common Root Farm on October 6th in the afternoon, 1 to 2:30. It's on our website. It's gonna be really exciting. Looking forward to seeing it, Jenny. Thanks so much for hosting. And yeah, all that's on our website, and the conversation continues. Thank you so much, everybody, for your input. It really matters. We take the notes and we incorporate it into our policy recommendations. So thank you so much for your input, and just have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Lorian.
Thank you.